Hello and welcome to this edition of Class is in Session on Black Enterprise. I'm your host, Ashley Stevens, and on this show, we highlight the latest issues impacting HBCUs and these historic institutions. We also highlight HBCU alum who are making major moves in the arts, business, education, and health. I am super excited to have not only a professional in the mental health space, but also a friend of many years who is doing her thing and doing it big. Dr. LaNail Plummer, she's CEO of Onyx Therapy Group. Now, she certainly knows how to balance it all. As an entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, military veteran, HBCU alumna, a mother, a leading voice in the mental health space for Black Americans, and also CEO of Onyx Therapy Group. We're going to discuss how her HBCU background from Howard University, the Howard University, helped shape her professional and personal legacy and career, including sending 2 children to HBCUs, and also her unrelenting advocacy for women, children, and the LGBTQ plus community. Plus, we're going to discuss her newest book, The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women. I am super excited to welcome Dr. LaNail Plummer to Class is in Session. Hello, Dr. Plummer.
Hey, Ashley.
I'm so excited to have you here. We connected many years ago in a group of girlfriends, our sister circle, who all of you are, I don't want to get this wrong, Dr. Plummer, LCPCS. Tell us what that means.
That's right. This is one of my many credentials. I'm deep into this therapy stuff, but LCPCS means Licensed Clinical Professional Counselor, Supervisor status. So I'm also able to supervise counselors who are wanting to advance in their careers. And I have a couple of other credentials, but for the sake of the book title, I had to just keep it down to 2.
Got it. Well, listen, we know that you do a lot and you impact a lot of folks in your community. I kind of want to go back and just hear more about your story. Tell us where you're from. Where did you grow up? And what value was higher education placed on your life growing up?
Oh, yeah. Okay, Ashley. So I'm originally from Southern California. I spent my early years in Los Angeles and then moved out to San Bernardino. And then when I entered high school, I moved to Seoul, Korea. So my dad is also a veteran for the United States Army. And I spent the large majority of high school in Seoul. And then I moved to Mililani, Hawaii, which is on the island of Oahu. And I came out to the East Coast to attend Howard. And so when I was a child, neither one of my parents had graduated from college. In fact, both of them got their college degrees after I got my college degree. And then my father even went and got his master's degree after I got my master's degree. So they said that I inspired them, that if they could create someone who could get that education, they knew that they too could get the education. But education was a priority for my family, but they didn't necessarily push college per se because that's not where their success came from. You know, my dad is a soldier, so he always had to participate in training for the military. So education was important, but not in the traditional formal college kind of way. And it was me that really wanted to go to college because I'm a nerd. Like, I would pick up books all the time. They would be out running errands, and I'd be with them running errands with a crossword puzzle or a word search or an actual book. The library was one of my favorite places. I loved the Dewey Decimal System and going to the card catalog and seeing if I could compete against the due date. Like, can I read this book before it's actually due? So the nerd in me was really, really pressed to go to college. And then I went and got 3 different degrees. And now I get to watch my kids go and pursue their formal education too.
I love that. So you became a trendsetter
Yeah.
in your family. But why Howard specifically? You lived literally from the West Coast to Hawaii. You have lived all over. So how did you end up on the East Coast and at Howard University specifically?
Yeah, before I answer that, Ashley, you just made me think about something else. I am a trendsetter for my family, and not just my immediate family, like my children, but right now I have 5 little cousins that are in college, and they are all at HBCUs. Like, I've been deep into this. You know, they're at A&T and Morgan, Virginia State, Howard. Like, we are deep into this. And many of my cousins didn't go to college, and so my younger cousins, the baby cousins, have been leaning in and looking towards me for that experience. So, in fact, with many of my cousins, when they would come visit me in the summer, I would take them to Howard and walk them around and tell them about the history and take them to the library and through the stacks. And so they started to increase their passion about going. to college and HBCUs as well. So I chose Howard. Interestingly enough, was in church, and there was a young man who who went to church with us. Right, I was close with his siblings, and he had finished his freshman year at Howard and came back to church and spoke about it. Like, those are some of the beautiful ways that churches invest in kids, right? And so they had him as a guest speaker. Guest, I don't know because he was a member of the church, but a guest speaker, and he spoke about Howard in ways that excited me. And I had already been reading about Thurgood Marshall. I was already, thinking about what my career options were going to be. I grew up, like I was saying, largely in poverty, and so in those situations, the careers that we're told about are, being a physician, being an attorney, and working like as a firefighter or police officer. So I was already thinking about justice because I thought that was my only option. And then here he comes and he starts talking about Howard. And I went and went to the library and read as much as I could about Howard and fell in love with it. So at 12, I made the decision that I was going to go to Howard, and I tailored my middle school and high school experiences so that I could get accepted to Howard because I knew it was competitive. And so when I was in Hawaii, I got my acceptance letter and was, just thrilled, and my life changed in so many ways from that moment to now.
That's remarkable. And I love how you mentioned you're a trendsetter, not just for your immediate family, but extended family as
Right.
well.
Yeah,
And HU helped to pave the way.
that's right,
What
that's
did you
right.
earn your degree in?
My first degree from Howard is in administration, um, administration of justice. So remember, I was thinking about like being an attorney. I was also curious about maybe forensic psychology. So my major was administration of justice, and my minor was psychology. My second degree is in counseling. So both my first two degrees are from Howard, and my third degree is from a smaller PWI in Virginia.
Wonderful. That's incredible. I'm very
Yeah.
proud of you. And I know you mentioned your dad's a military veteran,
Yes.
but you are as well. So how
Yeah.
did the military fit in? Did you join the military before or after going to Howard?
Oh, I love these questions, Ashley. So I am the oldest of four, and I was raised the way older daughters are, right? Like, you gotta look out for your younger siblings and think about them. And I knew that my dad only had a certain amount of money saved away for college, and it was not gonna be an easy divide amongst the four of us. And I'm far more studious than my siblings. They're probably gonna listen in and be like, "Girl, why you say that?" But I am more studious than they are, and had the opportunity to get an ROTC scholarship. So I took the ROTC scholarship in hopes that my younger siblings would go to college and my dad would be able to help fund their college experience, because I wasn't sure if they were gonna get scholarships and what that was gonna look like for them. So I kinda made that sacrifice. So I joined ROTC right after my sophomore year at Howard, and did all of my trainings. And would you believe it? In my senior year, 9/11 happened. And so I knew as a senior that I would be involved in wartime efforts, which was really tough because, I didn't originally think about going into the military. Like, that wasn't part of my original plan. And remember, I'm a planner, right? I said at 12, I wanted to go to Howard. So I had already l laid out what my life plan was gonna be like, and going to war was not part of it. But I am proud to have been able to serve the United States Army and to serve our country, through my status as a soldier and as a veteran, and to extend my father's legacy, which was important to me as well. So, funny enough, I made that sacrifices, and now my siblings are in college. They took a long break, so I tell them that they owe me some money, but but I'm proud of them because 'cause they're in school right now.
I love to hear that. I love to hear it. And I think what's important too, one, thank you for your service to the country, but that you were able to really do both at the same time, both, pursuing military while finishing your degree. Tell me how both the military and your status as an HBCU alumna helped prepare you for your career.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, Ashley, when I when I was commissioned, because I was commissioned as a second lieutenant, I shortly after that, again, we were going into wartime efforts, and then I got pregnant with my daughter. So while I was serving the United States Army and pursuing at that point my master's degree, I was also a young mom. And so there was a lot of things that I was trying to navigate at that time, like identity as a soldier, identity as a Black woman in the military. We know all the history about how the military is formed in the United States, and what Black people's roles were and what Black women's roles were. And so it was really a complicated time for me as a young person because I was only 21 at the time, 22. And um and so the military taught me about resilience. It taught me about I had to accelerate my identity. Coming from Howard was powerful because most of my education was centered around Blackness. My instructors, my professors were Black. The textbooks that we were reading from had Black influence. It was always culturally competent. Our classroom discussions always centered our Black experience. I was so pressed for my children to go to HBCUs because I remember my 4 years, 6 years, 7 years at Howard, and how um, I knew I knew who I was in the sense of being Black. Like nobody was going to be able to take that away from me. I was empowered, and I truly knew my history. Like I knew the history of Black folks in mental health and psychology. I knew the history of Black folks in education. I knew it, right? And so I could walk into a space fully confident because my competence has been built around Black experience and Black excellence. But the United States Army is not designed for that experience. It's really designed for everybody to move as one, which is why we wear the same uniforms and we eat a lot of the same things and we do a lot of the same things and we have the same expectations because it's designed to move as one. But my one is different from their one, right? Many of the military folks are white folks, white men in particular, and different from that. So I had to understand my identity in a different type of way. And I had to make decisions that were gonna be helpful for my soldiers and helpful for me. And so I learned responsibility, I learned leadership in action, I learned resilience in the face of obstacles, including some of my commanders. Um, I learned friendship in a different type of way, right? Because you allow people to influence your life. Like your battle buddy is a person that keeps you safe and you keep them safe, right? So there was lots of things that I learned that allowed me to become the professional that I am now. I wrote the essential guide, but I'm also submitting my second manuscript, which is a leadership book. And a lot of that is based off of my experiences in the Army and how to make decisions. Because in the Army, as an officer, you're making decisions that are going to affect a person's life life or death decisions. And so if you can make those kind of decisions, then it makes it easier when you have smaller decisions that you have to make, right? Like you understand the deliberate efforts that are necessary
Mhm.
for decision making. Yeah.
Wow, it's heavy and it's necessary, right? How
Yeah.
both avenues prepared you for where you are now. So obviously you initially intended to kind of go and have a more of a justice focused route. How did you get an interest in counseling and therapy? When did that light come on? Because obviously you devoted your career to it since.
Yeah.
So when did you gain an interest in kind of helping other people through their needs?
Yeah. So, like I was saying, growing up in in the hood, the careers that were offered to me were, being an attorney, being a physician, or being a police officer, firefighter. So when I got to Howard, and I'm going through the catalog of majors, I'm like, what the heck? Like, there's so much I could do, right? Like, I don't have to just go these particular routes. Now, keep in mind, I had experience with mental health workers before because we had social workers that were in our neighborhood, but their role was different than the work I wanted to do, right? Like social workers in poorer Black communities have a bad rap because they're usually the ones that are like separating families or taking away benefits. And I knew I didn't want to do that, but I knew I wanted to work with people and their mind and their decision making processes. So I took a work study opportunity at a school in DC, and I met this young guy. His name was Daryl, and he was in the second grade. I think at that time I was probably like 19 or 20. And he was so excited because he had just learned how to spell his name. And he was 7, right? And he had just learned how to spell his name. So normally kids learn how to spell their name when they're like 4 or 5, right? But he had mental health challenges that had prevented him from learning how to spell his name. And so when I had the opportunity to work with him just as a work study student, I said, "How did you do this? Like, this is so great. Like, what happened?" And he called out somebody's name who happened to be his counselor. And he was like, "She taught me how to slow down, and she taught me how to think, and she taught me how to do all these things. And now I know how to spell my name." And he was so proud of this achievement, right? One that we take for granted, but one that was super important to him. And he had given his credit to his counselor. And I knew at that moment I wanted that. I wanted to help people make the decisions. I wanted them to feel good about themselves. I wanted them to have achievements, whether it was big or small. I wanted them to understand how their mind works. And for Black folks in particular, I wanted to create paths where our trauma was not going to continue to oppress us. Like, the systems oppress us, people try to oppress us, but I didn't want our own experiences to oppress us. And so that meant that we needed to be able to navigate and walk through different life experiences that we've made for ourselves, but that society has placed on us as well. And so that's how I've gotten into therapy because of Daryl. And sometimes, I'm still in the area, so sometimes I wonder what he's doing now. And I don't know his last name. I couldn't see him and recognize him, but there are many times when I think about little Daryl and how that one conversation changed changed the trajectory of my life and has me here now, doing this work that I'm so passionate about.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's a very inspiring story to hear that that was the one story, that one instance that changed your trajectory.
Yes.
Dr. Plummer, you obviously have spent your career being committed to advocating for Black people,
Yes.
women, children, LGBTQ plus community. Why? Why us? Why are we, not that we're not important, but why has this been your mission and what you've been most passionate about?
I mean, because it's me. Like, it's me. I am you, you are me, we are one, right? Like, I truly believe in ancestral spirit and ancestral knowledge. And so the village concept is one that is extremely important to me. Um, Everybody has a role, and I know that mine is a healer, and I'm a healer of the mind. And I believe that that has been passed down to me in various spiritual ways. And it is why at 7 I was curious about the ways that people made decisions. It is why I was a nerd and always willing to go to the library and to pick up books and to read and to learn and then to teach others. I would go to school and learn from my teachers and then go back home and teach my Barbie dolls and my baby dolls, right? Like, this is always who I've been. And and I love Blackness. I love everything about who we are, and going to Howard and spending those years there just deepened my love for my people. Um, and so I was like, if I'm gonna have these skills and I'm gonna have this expertise and I'm gonna have this passion, the people who are gonna benefit from it are the people who have invested in me. And that doesn't mean that that white people or other non-Black people haven't invested in me. They truly have. But my Black community continues to love on me and continues to support me and continue to elevate me, and I'm going to completely do the same thing. So if I have the skill to heal, I'm going to heal my folks, and if I have the skill to teach, I'm going to teach my folks, and if I have the skill and the passion to do certain things, I'm going to do it with the people who learn and benefit. And also, actually, this we are marginalized. Black women are 2 times away from the margin, right? Like, if we think about margins as a piece of paper with that margin line on it, we are 2 times outside of that margin. I'm gonna do everything I can to get us closer to the margin so that we can have the lives that we wanna be able to have for ourselves. And so that comes from doing direct service as a therapist, that comes from teaching. I'm a department chair at a university here in DC. That comes from, writing a book or doing podcasts. Whatever I can do to educate my people is important to me, because I am here because they are here. And and I am here because our ancestors were here. And I think that I owe it to those who've paved the way for me to feed into the community.
I love that you're intentional about feeding into the very community of which we are a part of, and I'd
Yeah.
love to talk a little bit about that. What are some of the stigma surrounding, mental health support,
Yeah.
therapy, counseling in the Black community specifically?
Yeah. It used to be extremely bad. Like the stigma was that if we received mental health support, it meant that we were psychotic, or that we had, schizophrenia, that we had some of the most extreme personality disorders, or mood disorders. And part of the reason that occurred actually is because, we already marginalized, and our ancestors had to, if there was any sign of weakness, then the implication was that you should not be here. And that meant death. And so they would hide people that had mental health disorders, right? Like, we all have heard stories about a great great uncle that stayed in the back room all the time. And we don't know why he was always in the back room, but then later we realized he was in the back room because he had mental health issues. And our family was afraid that if people found out, then they would hurt him or harm him, or that he would make mistakes that would cause somebody else to kill him. And so we didn't talk about mental health because it was a life or death thing, right? A physical safety thing. And so there was stigma that was connected to that. But over the years, we've gotten a little bit looser around that stigma. And I want to give credit to President Obama, because under his leadership is when we really started to see more focus on mental health services and support. And he made that more universal through the healthcare that he was creating and supporting, through always talking about mental health and advocating for mental health. And because of who he is and what he represented for us in the Black community, he began to normalize the conversations around mental health. And that's when we really saw a major incline in Black folks engaging in mental health services. And so there's still stigma there. Is something wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Why can't you fix it by yourself? Why can't the church help you? Can't you pray it away? And that last one is one of the ones that's funniest to me, because I'm like, if one of us gets cancer or we get diabetes, we don't just pray it away. We go to an oncologist, right? Like, we're praying that God gives us the best oncologist, right? Like, but with mental health, folks are like, I'm gonna just pray it away. No, go to a therapist and pray that God gives you the best therapist, right? Because it is still a health issue that needs to be addressed. And I don't think people always make that connection, that mental health is connected to brain health, and brain health is part of physical health. And so we have to take care of our whole body. And my job is from the neck up. And some physicians and some doctors, theirs is from the neck down, right? And um, so there's still stigma there, but it's not as bad as it used to be. And there's so many TV shows that are normalizing conversations around mental health. There's so many entertainers that are normalizing conversations around mental health. And because they take those stances, we're able to reduce the stigma and welcome more people into our offices.
I love to hear that. I actually love the analogy you made with, you're treating from the neck up, other physical doctors may be treating from the neck down, but still your mental health is a part of your brain, health as well. And obviously there's a lot of stigma related to, religion and faith overshadowing, uh, seeking mental health support instead of them complementing each other. What tips can you provide to our audience, Dr. Plummer, on how folks, specifically in the Black community, can go about seeking the right licensed counselor or therapist?
Yeah, absolutely. I think listening to this particular episode is one of those, right? Like, if you're listening, then it means that you're interested, not just in my journey as a bison, but what I have to say about mental health. And so thank you first for being interested as you're listening in. And then the next thing is to do a little bit more research. And it doesn't have to be heavy research, right? Like, but go to a couple of sites. One I want to point people to is an article that I wrote for Ebony magazine called How to Find Your Perfect Therapist. That is simply what it is, How to Find Your Perfect Therapist. And I wrote the entire article on the steps around what Black people need to do and look for when they're thinking about therapy. Um, so some of those things are, first, read that article, and then think about what you want to get out of therapy, and recognize that what you say you want to get out of therapy may not be the only thing you all talk about. You may talk about many other things, because the things that we say we want to talk about are usually the surface elements, and there's some root issues that are underneath there. So when you start therapy and it starts to feel a little uncomfortable, just stay with it. It's kind of like if you have a little infection in your body, when you go to get it, to get the surgery to get that infection out, the cut hurts a little bit, but eventually you know that you're healing because you're getting that infection out. And so stick with the discomfort, even though you know you may not like it. In order to find a good therapist for yourself, to start interviewing the therapist, use some of the sites that we really rely on. I love Therapy for Black Girls, that's led by Dr. Joy Bradford. Uh, and in that on that site, it's so many therapists that may meet your need and your want, meet your insurance needs, meet your time and availability needs. For our brothers, we also have Therapy for Black Men, which is a wonderful site that you can use too. There's also other sources like Psychology Today and Good Therapy. So pick just one of those sites so you don't overwhelm yourself. Pick one of them, put in your information, and see what kind of gets spit out after you are created, rather. So after you do that, start thinking about how you process. Are you a thinker? Are you a filler? Um, and so when you talk to the therapist, every therapist should give you at least a 15-minute free consultation. So don't go with the first therapist, go with the therapist that you feel most connected to, because the therapeutic relationship is part of the healing process. So spend a day doing a couple of calls and getting some emails, and ask them questions about you, right? Like, how do you engage with Black women? That's what you're asking the therapist. You know, how do you engage with somebody who's a thinker? Or how do you engage with somebody who's a filler? I think my issue that I want to address is my trauma in my childhood. Tell me a little bit about your experience in working with clients who want to talk about their experience with their trauma in childhood. So talk to the therapist and interview them, because they are about to be helping you. Just like if you are an employer, you're going to interview the perfect staff member for you. And if you're a staff member, you're going to interview that employer to make sure that it's a good fit. This is a healing journey. And so this is not something to be flippant about. Like, it has to be some consideration in there. And so take your time in choosing the person who's right for you. Of course, I'm going to advocate for Onyx Therapy Group because I know my team. And we are 24 wonderful Black folks that are doing therapy across the country. And even if we can't help you, we will help find a therapist for you outside of Onyx. That's one of our services that we offer as well. So take your time. I would also encourage you to read the book, The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women. While it's called Counseling Black Women, it's actually for healing Black women, right? Yes, thank you, Ashley. And in this book, there's so many topics that I'm discussing that will help you start to process some of the things that you need to be thinking about in therapy. And so in reading the book, you'll think about, oh, how do my friendships influence my mental health? How does my work and my legacy influence my mental health? How does the fact that I have moved away or that I've stayed close to home, how does that affect my mental health? You know, so the first few chapters are about just our lives in general and the influence on mental health. And then the later chapters are the technical pieces around addressing like our uh, diagnosis and addressing our trauma and things like that. That was a long answer, Ashley.
But I got a lot out of it. And I tell you, Dr. Plummer, I learned something new as I have throughout our conversation, but I did not know that in seeking a therapist, that individuals should be encouraged to interview their therapist, and that therapists should provide a free 15-minute consultation. I never knew that. I
Yes,
never knew
yes,
that.
yes. Yes, yes, yes. That is best practice in the field. Um, for there to be that free consultation. And you know, when my therapist recently, my therapist has changed her kind of career a little bit, and she does more admin as the CEO of her company. And when she was leaving, I was her last client, And I had to go back into the field and start interviewing therapists for myself, And so I know what I'm talking about, not just as a clinician or a CEO of a mental health company, but also as a client. I know how it can be daunting sometimes to like look for a therapist and then to reach out to the therapist and then to talk to the therapist. But that's the best way that you find the perfect fit for you. So I didn't go with the first few people that I interviewed. I went with somebody who I knew could give me what I needed. And what I need now as a 45-year-old woman with 2 adult children is very different than what I needed 10 years ago when I started with my therapist as a newly married woman with children that were in middle school and high school, right? And so you have to take that time, and I know sometimes folks are like, "That's too much, it's too much," but you're likely gonna stay with this therapist for years on years. It's a relationship, and so you're gonna stay with them as you go through different chapters of your life. So take that 15 minutes and interview them. That 15 minutes is gonna help you determine whether this is the right person for you or not.
That's important. You mentioned life changes. We're not who we were 10,
No.
15, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, should someone keep the same therapist throughout their adult life journey, or even from children who have therapists on into adulthood, or is it okay to change therapist,
It's
when you have
absolutely
major life changes?
It's absolutely okay to change. I mean, my children now, like I mentioned, are young adults. They can't keep going to their pediatrician. Like they have new lives. They have new things that are going on. My daughter is a young woman now. She has to have a physician and she has to have, an OBGYN as well, right? Like different changes in life require different expertise and different services. And your therapist that you choose, initially they may have all the skill set and the competency for one particular area of your life, but then when you go to a new area of your life, you may need a different set of skills. If you are single, this the one therapist may be perfect for you. And then you may get married and start facing different marriage issues, and this therapist could still work, or you may need a marriage and family therapist, a MFT, right, who understands systems in a different way, because your first therapist was a generalist, and this therapist is a specialty, has a specialty. And so it's okay to change. It's also okay to stay with the same person. It's really up to you and your comfort. What I will say is just stay in therapy. So whether you stay with that one person or whether you get a new person, either one is fine. Just don't discontinue therapy until you really need to. And then, even then, still establish a relationship with a therapist where you can have some drop ins, maybe once or twice a year, just to make sure that you are maintaining. It's kind of like when you take your car to just get its maintenance checks. We also need our emotional maintenance checks, making sure that we're still on track with the progress that we had made before.
This is super helpful info. We are here at Classes in Session with Dr. LaNail Plummer. She is an author, speaker, and LCPCS, licensed clinical professional counselor
Yeah,
supervisor. Is that correct?
that's
I
right.
got it right. I got it right. So, there's a lot of discussion lately around credentials, right? And,
Yeah.
and what
Oh,
type of credentials one should have. So, when we think about selecting a therapist, Dr. Plummer, what type of credentials should someone look for to make sure that their therapist or counselor has to advise them properly?
they need to have a credential. So that is the first thing. We have folks out here that are calling themselves mental health coaches and calling themselves, psychological experts. That's cool. Their work should not be in direct therapy, though. Maybe they are doing wellness speaking, or maybe they are writing curriculum, but they are not licensed and skilled and approved to do one-on-one therapy or couples therapy or group therapy. So you need to make sure that they have something that has an L in it, whether it is LCPC, which is licensed clinical professional counselor, whether it's LPC, licensed professional counselor, LMFT, which is licensed marriage and family therapist. There needs to be something behind their name. So if there's not something behind their name that indicates that they can provide therapy, then that is not a person that you want to work with. And I say that with all due respect for those who are in wellness, but there is we as therapists, as licensed therapists, we learn certain skills that keep people safe. and that keep them well. And without that approval, and I know people are like, well, why do I need to be approved? Why do they need to be approved by this person? It keeps us accountable for how we treat you. You wouldn't go to a person who said that they know the body and now they're calling themselves a doctor. No, you want to go to somebody who's been board approved, who has met all the standards, who have ethical codes that they must abide by to keep you safe, and who, if they mess up, you can hold them accountable in their career, but also hold them accountable financially if their harm has caused a financial issue for you. The same applies for mental health. Remember, we are healers. This is healthcare. This is not just, you know, talking to a person. This is not just a conversation. We are healing you, and we have very specific and strategic ways that we do that. Again, with treatment plans and techniques and interventions that we must use. So it is true that there's conversations around credentialing right now, and I have many thoughts, right? That's not what you asked me, but I have many thoughts about this situation. And the biggest is that I am glad that this is coming out so we can increase the conversation and awareness around therapy must be done by someone who is licensed, and that person doesn't have to have a doctorate, but they do have to have a master's degree. And so you should also ask them what their master's degree is in. They're either going to have an MED, a master's in education in counseling, or they're going to have an MA, which is a master's of arts in counseling. And so they must have a master's degree, and they must have a credential that starts with an L.
Interesting. This is insightful. I've learned a lot. Dr. LaNail Plummer here at Classes in Session. Listen, you shared a lot of insight into credentialing, things I didn't know before. Do
Yeah.
you think there's a larger conversation around Black women specifically having to defend their education or defend their credentials? And if so, why? Why should Black women have to defend these things?
I don't think that it's fair that we have to defend these things. I think that, we should be able to get our education and speak proudly about that education. But I think that if one is caught up in a lie, then they do have to defend themselves because you are now questioning your accountability. And like I said a second ago, Ashley, I'm dedicated to the Black community because the Black community feeds into me. And there's people who are benefiting from being Black and getting the support from the Black community and subsequently lying. And that is not okay. You don't lie at all. That's my spiritual position around integrity and maybe my army values around integrity. But you don't lie, but you absolutely don't lie to the people who've been supporting you, right? Like that's just crazy. You're not, like what is that about? And so I do recognize that there's going to be times where we have to defend our credentials, and I do not think that is fair. Equally so, I do not think it's fair that Black women are treated differently. I do not think that it's fair that Black women are not valued in the ways that we need to be valued, And we're at a really interesting point, Ashley, without going too political, but recognizing that so many Black women have lost their jobs in the last 18 months. I've done several articles with Forbes magazine about that and the implications on our mental health, and several articles with Psychology Today about what's happening with Black women in our mental health as we are losing our jobs because our relationship with work as Black women is different from everybody else's because of our history with slavery and how we came to this country, which was to work. And so when our work is taken away from us in certain kind of ways outside of our control, it can make us feel powerless. And so we are the most educated in proportionality. We are the most educated, and we are making extreme strides in building wealth and creating generational wealth. And I think politically that became a threat to certain people, and it made them feel like there was not that our slice of the pie was too big and they needed to take that away from us. And so they've used different systems to be able to do that and use their own ways. And so it is traumatizing. It's triggering to our ancestral knowledge. It has generational implications, and we need to be able to address that. So when a Black woman falsifies her education, and falsifies her credentials, it takes us back, right? Like we are making strides forward in terms of this is what our education means to us. This is what we do with it. This is why we value it. We're going to go and get our degrees. We're going to go and have these experiences. And so when a Black woman falsifies that information, we have to go a couple steps backwards because now everybody is questioning all of us because of one of us. And that's upsetting. Yeah.
That's upsetting. I agree with you. You spoke a lot to the implications for Black women, again, having to defend themselves. But I think that feeds right into why you do what you do,
Yeah.
specifically with Onyx Therapy. So again, tell us as the CEO of Onyx Therapy Group, what you do, who you serve, and really your day in the life as an entrepreneur. You're not just a licensed clinical professional counselor supervisor, but you're also a business owner, like you're managing a team. So tell us all about Onyx Therapy Group.
Oh, there's so much in that. Onyx is my third baby. I have my daughter Alyssa, who's 22, and my son Bradshaw, who we call Deuce, who's almost 19. And then I have Onyx. Onyx is my baby. Onyx is a teenager now. She's 13, and she does the things that 13-year-olds do. So Onyx is a mental health company. We are more than a group practice because we have the private practice where we see clients one-on-one or in couples and family, but we are also school-based. So we have several clinicians who work in schools because it's important to me that our young folks get the best type of counseling and therapy too to intervene on their lives and within their lives. We also do government contracting to make sure that, the government workers and those who support residents and citizens are getting the support that they need because that's heavy work that they're doing. And we also work with corporate and do HR aligned work, so supporting HR departments and corporations so that they are getting the support that they need as they're working with employees who are having challenges at work. And then we also do coaching, which is something that I really love for my staff as well. So we are a multi-departmental mental health company. We are predominantly Black. It's 44 of us on staff, and 24 of them are in clinical practice, so seeing clients. The other team are writing curriculum. They're doing coaching. They are leading educational workshops and trainings. They are supporting HR, like I mentioned, and doing some of our federal government work. And then our admin team, who we can't, none of us could do our work without them. So we absolutely love and need them. And so the day in the life as an entrepreneur is funny.
Mhm.
It's not predictable in the ways that I had initially thought it would be. Uh, and I think what makes it more complicated is I'm also a department chair at a university. And so I felt comfortable being able to do that because Onyx has been around for so long and it is a well-oiled machine.
Mhm.
But as a CEO, I'm also thinking about staffing. I'm thinking about our finances and our budgets. I'm thinking about forecasting in the future. I have to pay attention to certain things that are happening in politics because that's going to affect our work. And so I need to be able to know when and how to pivot. So a lot of decision making. I also get the opportunity to work with my clinical team, so I supervise them and get to feed in on their clinical skill set and practices, which I absolutely love. And yeah, so as a CEO, it's a lot more admin work and front facing, client facing, meaning that I'm often in meetings with people who want to work with Onyx as a whole company or helping to write RFPs, helping to write the responses to RFPs and things like that. Managing my team, which is easy work. Black folks feel really safe in our company because of the psychological safety. And so we don't have like a whole lot of HR issues or staff issues. So it's not a lot of that work, but there was a lot of intentionality in making sure that everybody feels safe in the company and feels seen in the company as well. And
That
I did
that
not choose to be a CEO. I guess I did at some point, but my career is centered on therapy. So I still keep a caseload because I still need to see clients. That's my passion, seeing clients, supervising clinicians, and teaching counselors in training. CEO is what I do because that's what God has told me I need to do as well. But that's not where my passion is. I'm appreciative, but not as passionate about it. I'm more passionate about therapy with my Black folks.
I love it. Passionate about therapy with your Black folks. I know that you are. So, as a CEO and you're teaching and leading others, you still have a client load. How did you have time to write a book? Like, let's just be real about that. Like, how in the world did you have time to write a book? And what were your biggest learnings, throughout the process of writing the book? And now that it is finished, it's out, people are reading it. What were your biggest learnings and your biggest wins from publishing this book, Dr. Plummer?
This morning I was journaling, Ashley, and the journal prompt I came up with, right? Because I believe in self-study, so I study myself a lot. And in fact, I'm reading a book called The 5 a.m. Club. I've always risen early in the morning. But in that book, the author was talking about the fact that we need to spend 10,000 hours studying ourselves to really become the best version of ourselves. So as I was journaling this morning, I was journaling about my relationship with patients and not patients as in clients, patients as in the virtue of patience and how that became a thing. And it's largely connected to my time management. So I've always appreciated structure and organization around time. That's probably one of my strongest skills. And then I have an amazing assistant, Shahida Abdul Latif, who helps keep everything structured with my time. So I was able to write the book because everything had a time block. So I had time for planning, and I had time for teaching, and I had time for clients, and I had time for admin for being the CEO. I have time, of course, for my children and for my partner. Time for myself. I spend a lot of time with myself in the morning. Maybe the first 4 hours of the day, I'm with myself, and all of that helps feed into the rest of the day. So I wrote the book. I was able to write the book, and I am now finishing up my second manuscript for my next book because of time organization and strong boundaries. When I'm working on these big projects, I let folks know that I'm working on the big project so they don't feel cheated when I don't respond to texts as quickly or I don't go to all the birthday parties and the celebrations because they know that I'm working on something and it's temporary. So, one of the things that I needed to do though in the process actually is that I was working at Johns Hopkins and I took a hiatus from teaching for about a year so I could finish the book. And that happened because as I was writing the book, there were parts where I myself was getting triggered. The information needed to be put out in the world, but there were chapters that were really hard for me because I had experienced them myself and I needed to process them through therapy and I needed to journal about them too. So to not overwhelm myself, I took a brief hiatus from teaching. I left Hopkins and then I eventually came to Trinity, Washington. So some of the biggest takeaways was that our life can be hard, but it's doable. Like we can do it, and we've already lived our worst days, right? Like so we can do it. Some of the other takeaways were that I was on path with my purpose. My Black Women Deserve This book. And it came out in January and it became a bestseller that same day because of how pre-sales work. Thank you. So it is a number one best-selling book and it has since the day it came out, it has stayed on the bestsellers list. And so I'm really proud about that because, it's several months in. Um, and I learned a lot about the publishing world, and I was not prepared for that. But the book is published by Norton, and so it's not self-published, which means that there's different politics that are involved in publishing. And and I had to learn a lot about that as well. And I'm appreciative. And now I feel like I can help others when they are ready to publish, whether they self-publish or they decide that they're going to publish through a publishing house.
Incredible again to hear about all you've done and accomplished with the book, The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women, and that your second manuscript is underway. Dr. Plummer, you've created such a legacy, not just with your company, Onyx Therapy Group, and supporting Black women, practitioners and clinicians, as well as your clients, but also
Yeah.
through your children. You have two HBCU legacies, a Delta Sigma Theta legacy. Tell us where
Yes.
your children go to college or have just graduated from, and tell us at this point in your life, with all that you do, what you are most proud of.
God, Ashley, I am so proud of everything. I sit in gratitude every morning. Like, God, I'm just so thankful that you chose me for this life. You know what I'm saying? I'm so thankful that you chose me to be a vessel in these ways. We're on the heels of my daughter graduating from North Carolina A&T, so Aggie Pride. Uh, and I think right now that is where a lot of my joy is sitting. My baby did it. Like I mentioned earlier, I was the first in my family to go to college, and then my parents trailed behind me with that college experience. And so to be able to now see my daughter graduate from an HBCU that she chose to go to, that was her choice, right? I didn't tell her which HBCU, but I did tell her she must go to a HBCU. Because of that, I am proud that she um, graduated from her school. She's a bio pre-med major and doing her own thing. And of course, to see her as my legacy in Delta Sigma Theta has been an honor as well. So again, these are not things that I made them do, but they saw me working and modeling for them and made the choice. So I feel very full. In fact, when I did an Instagram post, I said that I love the HBCUs that do commencement around Mother's Day because they know that a mother's greatest gift is to watch her children achieve their dreams. And so to be able to see my daughter walk across that stage, graduate magna cum laude, do all the things that she wanted to do in college and continue to live her life is the one that I'm proud of. And equally so, watching my baby boy who's at Florida A&M. So I got a rattler also. So we got a bison, an Aggie, and a rattler in this house. And they actually they do try to bully me though. They try to tell me I gotta wear their school stuff. Why you don't wear my Aggie stuff? Why you don't wear my rattler stuff? I got one thing from each school. I got one Aggie thing. And I have two. Two Aggie things and two fam things. But I'm a bison. So I gotta wear my bison stuff. So um but I think watching them live their lives and feel so proud about being Black and so proud about their education, that's where my joy is sitting right now.
I love to hear that. I love to hear where your joy is sitting. Dr. LaNail
Mm.
Plummer, it's been a treat speaking with you. Where can folks find out more about what you do with Onyx Therapy Group and also as an author?
Absolutely. So you can go onto our website. It is onyxtherapygroup.com, and it is called Onyx. My company is named Onyx because Onyx is the blackest of the black crystals, right? And it is known for transformation power. It absorbs what is challenging and negative and it produces something that's positive. And to me, that's what therapy is. So you can find me on my website, onyxtherapygroup.com. You can follow me on Instagram. Simply put in my name, Dr. LaNail Plummer. And for the book is sold everywhere. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's at Barnes and Noble, rather. It's on Amazon. It's at Walmart. It's at Target. I don't know where we are with Target right now as Black folks, but that's a whole nother conversation.
The book is there. So
The book is there. The book is on audio version as well, read by a wonderful Black narrator who I absolutely adore. And it's on Kindle as well. So it's everywhere. So you can find me by my website, through the book. You can also just put my name into a quick Google search and you see some of the articles that I've written for some of our most popular magazines and work that we're doing. And the podcast, beautiful podcasts like the ones I get to have with you today, Ashley.
I love it. I've been so delighted not only to catch up with you, but to just to share and highlight all the positive things you've been doing. Obviously, I've had the pleasure of knowing you probably more than 10 years at this point
Yeah.
and have seen you and your peers, but specifically you to grow in your career and to really stick to the heart of why you got into therapy and why it's important for you to support Black women specifically. And I
Yeah.
love that for you. And I'm
Thank
glad to
you.
I'm glad to, kind of be along as a part of your journey to see what's going on. And I'm just so excited for you and your children. I mean, I just seeing them as HBCU students and now alum is super exciting. And I know that's a point of pride for you.
Isn't that crazy, Ashley? We've known each other all these years, and these kids are big. They're grown now, Ashley. They're
They're
grown.
grown. They're really good. They are our future, like literally. So I love
Yes.
it. And kudos to you for
Thank
all that
you.
you've done. So I've been excited to highlight you here today. Thank you for being here with Class is in Session, Dr. Plummer.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate it. Thank you,
Awesome.
sis.
Awesome. We are so glad to have had you again. You are watching this episode of Class is in Session. We feature Dr. LaNail Plummer. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor, supervising, and lots of other things. CEO, speaker, author. She's the founder and CEO of Onyx Therapy Group as well. You can check out her latest book. Be sure to share this episode with family and friends. I think in our community, a lot of times there is still a lot of stigma around getting help, getting support, getting credentialed support. And she walks us through what that looks like, who you should look for, how you can go about having a consultation, and how, having healthy mental health is overall a part of your overall physical health as well. I think we learned a lot here today. You can stay posted for the latest and greatest on Black Enterprise's website, blackenterprise.com, as well as our social media channels. You can also catch this podcast on Spotify as well. For this episode of Class is in Session featuring Dr. LaNail Plummer, I'm your host, Ashley Stevens, and class is dismissed.